Please join me in welcoming our second senior speaker, Mason Howell.
When will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We are not satisfied and will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. This quote is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech to devotees of the civil rights movement. He's addressing the social injustices that were occurring in 1963. 57 years ago, Martin Luther King addressed the issue of police brutality. 57 years ago, and it is still happening today. This isn't an issue that just pops up every once in a while. This happens all the time. There's so many victims of these horrific crimes, and the list continues to grow. I first started hearing about police brutality when Trayvon Martin died. I was only 9 years old at the time, so I really didn't understand at first. When I was in 6th grade, 2 years later, 12-year-old Tamir Rice was killed. I began to look into more of these tragedies. In 8th grade, we had to write a speech about global issues. And around the same time, Freddie Gray was killed by the police. And that is why I decided I wanted to write my speech about police brutality. My goal of the speech was to inform people about the issue and identify victims that they may have not known about before. My speech was very impactful, and people said that it made them emotional to know what's going on in the world. Here we are 4 years later, and I'm giving a speech on the same topic that seems to not have improved since I last talked about it. We have people like Jacob Blake, who got shot 7 times in the back. We have Breonna Taylor, who got killed inside their own home by police officers. And George Floyd, who had his neck kneeled on by an officer for 8 minutes and 46 seconds and died after telling him that he could not breathe. With everyone being in quarantine since March, everyone gets their information online and from the news. Some have said that quarantine has created the perfect storm for police brutality to be seen and acted on by people. This exposure to the issue is positive because people started to protest for change. It is hard to face the truth. Knowing about the different cases of police brutality is hard enough to hear about, but seeing a man have his neck kneeled on for 8 minutes and 46 seconds while saying he can't breathe is a lot to take in. Seeing a man get shot 7 times in the back while his kids are watching makes it difficult to see if change is really going to happen. These types of events affect everyone differently. Some can relate on a deeper level than others when they have gone through similar situations themselves. For example, a parent could sympathize with someone who has lost their child because they have children and they know what that is like. When I can empathize, but I cannot relate because I do not have children myself. Same thing with discrimination and racism. A white person cannot relate to racism and discrimination because that is not something they have to deal with. Whereas a person of color could relate to being treated differently or poorly because of the color of their skin. I am biracial, making it difficult for people to readily identify my race. Because of that, I am not likely to be discriminated against than someone who is black. However, when someone falls victim to police brutality, it affects me more seeing how these victims look no different than my family. I can only imagine how it would feel if one of these cases happened to them. But I cannot put myself in the shoes of these victims because it is less likely that it would happen to me. However, regardless of my racial experience, I have an understanding of the events that occur and can sympathize because I am affected on a human level. We all have a shared identity as humans no matter how different we look from each other. We are connected, and this connection allows us to sympathize with each other, understand each other, and love each other. We all must recognize that we are no different than those around us. In the words of Kofi Annan, we all may have different religions, different languages, different colored skin, but we are all part of one human race.